Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Hey, it's time for the Kevin Miller Cash Code Word. Win Kevin Miller's money on KIDO Talk Radio. Our code word today is break. That's right, break. Listen again at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., and 3 p.m. for your chance to win. When you hear the code words, get them, write them down, and type them up at KIDOTalkRadio.com. You could win up to $5,000. Joining us now from the Lars Larson Show, our great friend Lars Larson. Lars, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you this morning?
Not bad, and I can't wait to get your thoughts on this latest roadblock, impediment, the return of the Clarence Thomas-esque, if you will, shenanigans by the Democrats against Brett Kavanaugh, sir.
This is really shameful because even if you take this seriously, Dianne Feinstein had this letter back in July alleging that a young lady who said she believes she remembers that she was 15. She told, and that she was at a party with a number of people. She was going to an all-girls school, and Brett Kavanaugh was attending an all-male school, Georgetown Prep in Bethesda, Maryland, that they were at a party that Kavanaugh and another man named Ford, who's a friend of his, and that they were in a bedroom, that he forced her onto a bed, that she was wearing a swimsuit and other clothing on top of the swimsuit, and that he was grinding his body against hers and trying to take her bathing suit off, and that he put his hand over her mouth and attempted to assault her, but then it ended because somehow the three of them tumbled apart off the bed, and she managed to make her escape, and that was the end of it. She never told anyone about it, not publicly or not privately. Now, I could see reasons that a 15-year-old girl in high school would not want to maybe run right to mom and dad and say, hey, this kid tried to assault me, although I could see good reasons for her to report it. What I can't see is a great reason for Dianne Feinstein to have this letter in July and say nothing about it, to not bring it up during the public interviews or testimony of Brett Kavanaugh, but also not bring it up in the sessions that were the private sessions that Congress has where they can speak not off the record but out of public view about matters that maybe shouldn't be in public view. She didn't bring it up. She kept it in her hip pocket until we are now 4 days away from a vote on Judge Brett Kavanaugh. And people should understand that the American Bar Association, which is a very liberal organization, gave him a unanimous endorsement. Every legal expert I've talked to has said he is arguably the best qualified human being to be on the Supreme Court in our lifetimes, that there has not, prior to this, been somebody as well qualified, meaning has the legal education, has time as a federal judge, has a completely clean record, is a good man, is a man who's done good works in his private life, even when they look through all of his decisions, the usual place where you'd find objections to a person being on the court, they've scoured through his record of decisions. They can't find anything to take issue of. Now, you could do this with many judges. You could say, well, you let this sex offender off, or you ruled against a murder victim in that case, or you had this ruling that seemed to make no legal sense. He has none of that. And so what are they going to go after him with? They wait till the 11th hour and then say, here's this woman who says 36 years ago, 1982, he's a junior in high school, she's a sophomore at a different high school, they're at a party, he attempts to assault her and puts his hand over her mouth, and then after that, she escapes and nothing else happens. Now, this seems odd. She brought this up with her husband because they were in couples therapy about 6 years ago. So 30 years later, she brings it up during couples therapy for some reason and says, this happened. And she says she was attacked by students from an elitist boys' school who went on to become highly respected and high-ranking members of society in Washington. The notes also say that there were 4 boys involved, not 2. So her memory of it is apparently not perfect, and she apparently has remembered it 30 years later to bring it up during couples therapy, but without mentioning Kavanaugh's name. And now, as America is about to see the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh and the end of Democrats' ability to go to the Supreme Court and get the court to invent laws that were never in the Constitution that they can't get through Congress. And remember why that's important, Kevin. The Democrats have run out of options. They have tried in state legislatures to get things done, and they have failed. They lost an awful lot of the governors and state legislatures during Barack Obama's time in office. So that was an area that was closed off to them to make changes in America. Even when they were the majority in Congress, they couldn't seem to get anything done. So what they would do is they'd go to the courts, and they would say, we'd like a judge to make this law where we can't get it by a public vote, we can't get it through the legislature, and we can't get it through the Congress. They're about to see that option foreclosed by Donald Trump's second appointment to the Supreme Court, which he is entitled to make. And Donald Trump picks the best qualified candidate for the Supreme Court according to that's not according to Lars Larson. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to have that great knowledge. But all the legal experts I've talked to said this man has the best resume, not just his law school education, but the things he's done as a judge, the things he's done as a human being. And they can't find anything to complain about. Remember their first rap on Brett Kavanaugh is he spent a couple of $1,000s on baseball tickets until they found out that he was actually buying for a group of people who paid him back. And all of us have done that. You go buy a bunch of concert tickets so your group can all sit together, but you're not buying them out of your own pocket. But their biggest complaint was the man spent too much money on baseball tickets. Talk about an all-American. But now they say we have this accusation. And, Kevin, one of the really dangerous things is that when you have people like, say, Harvey Weinstein or other people in the celebrity world who over the last 11 months or so have been accused credibly of assaulting women, we should take that seriously. When there is some other backup to what they're saying. This is a one-off incident that is alleged to have happened more than a third of a century ago, which is you can't prove that it did happen, but on the other hand, you can't prove it didn't happen. So they want to hang this scarlet letter around Judge Kavanaugh's neck that he's already said it didn't happen. His friend, who was alleged to have been there assisting him in turning up the music so that her cries for help could not be heard, he says it didn't happen. She says it did happen, but she waits 36 years to make it public, and then Dianne Feinstein sits on the letter for 3 months, where we could have had an inquiry about this earlier this summer. I know I'm running off. Feel free to stop me, Kevin, but this really makes me angry because ask somebody in your community. If somebody were to come forward and say your mayor or a significant figure in your community did something a third of a century ago, you can never prove it didn't happen, so I can make the assertion it did. And the assertion comes at no cost. And further, I might point out, she doesn't have much of a political record, this professor, Blasey Ford. She's married. She's a professor of psychology. But I would point out that after Anita Hill made false accusations, and I still believe they are false accusations against Clarence Thomas, look what happened to her. She wrote books and made money. She became a celebrity in Democrat circles. She gave speeches and made a lot of money. She's the toast of some circles, having made accusations that the United States Congress didn't buy. They confirmed Justice Thomas, and I think he's one of the best members of the court. But if you can make an accusation that has great advantage for you and perhaps put you in the political spotlight in a positive way, because there will be people who say we should feel for this woman because she was assaulted all those years ago. I'm concerned that she made no contemporaneous references to this to anyone. She can't come up with a best friend. And Kevin, while I said she might not have called the police, she might not have gone to mom and dad, she might not have gone to her school, but if this awful thing had happened to you, would you have gone to your best friend as a young lady and said, gosh, you're not going to believe what Brett Kavanaugh did to me the other night? You're telling me that she went dead silent on this for 30 years, and it only comes up during couples therapy 30 years later? Tell me that we should buy this story, and tell me that we should torpedo the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, because the game plan here is the Democrats block his nomination. and it'll be blocked. If it gets blocked, the vote that's coming up later this week, if it gets blocked, they'll block it till after the election. The Democrats hope to win more seats in the United States Senate. It's a narrow Republican margin right now, and they hope to block every single judicial appointment of Donald Trump. Now, whether you voted for Trump or not, do you think that's the way it should work? That Americans chose a president, the Democrat Party hates him with a passion, and has been vowing to remove him or immobilize him since the day after the 2016 election. Should we allow that to happen? And then every single judicial appointment will be blocked if they win the Senate. Should that happen?
No, it shouldn't. Our great friend Lars Larson joining us on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Catch him tonight and every night at 6. It just shows you the depths, Lars, and you covered this, of what they will do to go after this man. And you're right. On one hand, you want to make sure that in the era of Me Too and before that, people that did these deeds are punished. Yep. And obviously respect for women. On the other hand, as you said, somebody could make up something about you or me, and you're just trying to disprove a negative. You're already running from behind.
And from all those years ago, which means you can't go back at this point. Imagine trying to go back and find people who were at that party that night or who saw her interact with Brett Kavanaugh in the days and weeks ahead. Because remember, they didn't go to the same school. They went to an all-girls and an all-boys school. So they may have never interacted again. But, Kevin, I'd ask your audience, no matter what they think of Donald Trump, no matter what they think of Brett Kavanaugh, ask themselves, when something really awful happened, and for most of us, something happened in high school, some untoward incident, like this, where a boy went too far, or a girl went too far, or somebody did something outrageous, did you never tell a single other soul about it at the time? And I'd ask your audience, can they remember when something truly extraordinary like this would have been extraordinary if this had happened to any young lady, would you have said, I'm never going to tell a soul about it? I'm not going to tell my mom and dad. I'm not going to call the police. I'm not going to mention it to a teacher. And I'm not going to mention it even to my best friend. Now, Kevin, I'm willing to bet there probably isn't a single member of your audience who had someone do something to them in high school that they thought was awful at the time, and would have been awful if true, and they never told a single person about it?
Lars Larson joining us here. You're right about that, Lars. So how do you see this playing out? Now all of a sudden they're targeting the two moderate senators, once again making this a Me Too issue. Kellyanne Conway, Lars, as you know, says that this woman will be given the opportunity to testify. She wants her to testify. How do you see this playing out?
I think it's one of two things. If the Republicans have a backbone, they're going to say, we are not going to hold up the nomination. And if they hold up the nomination, then the Republicans, and I mean individual members, but the party too, has sold out American voters. They have said, you chose a president, he has the right to pick a Supreme Court justice. He picks somebody who is as close to perfect as any human being can be for that job. So much so that the Democrats don't have anything they can say, here's something he did that disqualifies him. And they have found a way to block it, and the Republicans have agreed to let them do it. That means that those members of the Senate who do that will have sold out your choice. And this, I'm speaking to Trump voters like me. They'll have said your choice of president, which is also a choice to choose Supreme Court justices, has been sold out by the people who allegedly represent you. Now, the Me Too business, listen, the Me Too business needs to be taken seriously. There are women in this country who have been raped. Juanita Broderick was raped by Bill Clinton. Do you know? She told her best friend about it immediately, told the man who was then her boyfriend, who is now her husband, about it immediately. I'll bet you don't hear a single word from old Billy Clinton for the next several weeks on this thing. And I imagine she keeps her mouth shut, or he keeps his mouth shut about this. So charges should be taken seriously, but this one stinks to high heaven. And I just ask you, and the Washington Post says no contemporaneous accounts. I find it simply impossible to believe that this young lady at 15-year-olds boys or girls talk to each other a lot, especially when bad things happen to them, even if it's a minor bad thing. Somebody, a teacher yelled at you, or your boyfriend, decided not to take you out on Friday night. You tell your best friend. Something like this happens, and you don't tell anybody about it for 30 years? Tell me that's possible. And if you believe it's possible, perhaps there's a reason to hold this up. Otherwise, holding it up is just playing into the playbook of the Democrats who want to take from this president, and hence from you as a voter, the right to choose Supreme Court justices. And I explained to you why it is so important to them that they maintain control, some control of the Supreme Court, because it's their last place to go. Remember, Kevin, the Democrats said they wanted comprehensive immigration reform. Well, for 2 years, Barack Obama had a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate, and he had a veto-proof majority in the Senate. Did they get that done? No. Did they pass gun control? No. All the things they promised to do, they didn't get done when they had the ability to do it. Now, right now, the Republicans do not have a veto-proof majority in the Senate, which is why things are so tenuous. I'm not going to make a lot of excuses to Republicans because I think they have also failed us miserably. But the Democrats have one place they can go, and that's the courts. And this locks that off by establishing a constitutional majority on the court. Remember, I don't want a conservative majority on the Supreme Court. I want a Supreme Court that follows the Constitution and votes with the Constitution, like Antonin Scalia did. He would tell his law clerks, don't tell me what you think I want politically. Tell me what the Constitution says about this case. These are the young men and women who work with Supreme Court justices to help them do the research and all that backs up their decisions. If they lose the Supreme Court, the game is over for the Democrats.
Lars Larson, we always appreciate you, brother. Glad you're back home and good to hear from you.
It is a pleasure to be on with you, Kevin. Take care now.
All right, our great friend Lars Larson. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. And let's go to Conservative Steve. Thanks for your patience on KIDO Talk Radio.
How you doing, Kevin?
Great.
Same old story, man. Same old story. The Democrats, the same old story. Scrounging for it. It's just like it's like he was saying. Bill Clinton, 7 or 8 women? Boy, it's not even mentioned. Dianne Feinstein, has got a spy. She's head of the secret committee or whatever that has all this knowledge about America, and her driver's a Chinese spy for 20 years. Nothing's even mentioned about it. Same old story. I'm so sorry. These Republicans are gutless wonders, Kevin. They don't want to fight. That's why they got voted out in a lot of places, and that's why Trump got voted in. They're gutless. Just like Sean Connery said, you got to treat these Democrats like the mafia, man. The Chicago crime family. Hey, they bring a knife, you bring a gun. They bring a gun, you bring a tank. You really want to fight or you want to stand about it. They try to be too nice. You can't. These people fight for blood, man. And at least one thing about the Democrats, they do stick up for one another, man. They'll fight to the end. The Republicans scatter, and I believe one guy said made mention, and I believe this, Kevin. Hillary Clinton didn't lose any of those emails. She has all the emails, and guess what? It's probably got dirt on half of the Republicans. That's why they're keeping their mouths shut, just like Jeff Sessions. Oh, yeah, remember the little girl 45 years ago, Jeff, in school? The same stuff. And I believe, nobody's mentioned that before, but I believe it's true. These people are keeping a low profile and keeping their mouths closed because they are frightened and terrified of the same thing happening to them in their careers. It's exactly what it is, and it's really a shame. It really is. Because in this day and time, it used to be you were innocent till proven guilty. Now somebody points a finger at you and accuses you of something, and you're done. Really sad state of affairs, that's for sure. And nobody listens to the 65 women that wrote letters that said this is not the Kavanaugh they know, they went to school with and they worked with all these years. But you listen to one who can't even remember and never mentioned anything for 36 years. Something's really fishy in Denmark here, just like Lars said, for sure. Have a great day, friends.
All right, Conservative Steve, thank you. April in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, April.
Good morning. I just wanted to make a comment on our friend that was on earlier regarding women and girls saying things to their best friends or their family members, their brothers or their sisters, when things happen that are bad. And I completely disagree with this. As a young girl, and even as a young woman in high school, when something bad happened to me, I absolutely did not tell anybody. I was petrified. I didn't tell anybody until I had been married for 10 years, and I finally told somebody. It's not that people want to brag about it or even tell somebody about it when something bad happens. Women are not able to do that in society. And I
you find her report. Well, April, and that's obviously we love your opinion and we love everybody's opinion, whether we agree or not. Your thoughts on how this impacts Judge Kavanaugh? Do you believe her? Do you believe him?
And we love everybody's opinion, whether we. Judge Kavanaugh.
Okay, we lost April. More of your comments next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So they're out to get Judge Kavanaugh. When will the libs ever learn? And more importantly, when will the Republicans ever learn? Will the Republicans stand by Kavanaugh, as did presidents in the past when it came to Clarence Thomas and Judge Bork and others? Or are they going to cut their losses? Kellyanne Conway.
Let me make very clear again for those who just want to slice and dice what's being said today on behalf of the president. This woman should not be ignored and should not be insulted. She should be heard. Now, let's make very clear. Those Democratic senators had no interest in the mountain of evidence about Judge Kavanaugh's character integrity.
Right, but at the last day, the last hour, the last minute, is it significant?
That has to be weighed against what we've already know, which is that Judge Kavanaugh is a man of character and integrity who has been through 6 FBI vettings, which I can tell you firsthand are significant and thorough. He also has been lauded by women from every different aspect of his life, and this is significant.
Let's get your reaction. First, we go to John Decker at the White House. Never a dull moment from the White House to your house on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Better than Judge Kavanaugh, I think.
Yeah, Judge Kavanaugh, actually, he's at the White House currently, obviously talking with senior staffers here at the White House, maybe even the president himself, about these latest allegations and what it may mean for his nomination. We know that the Senate Judiciary Committee had planned on holding a vote on his nomination this Thursday. I don't think that's going to happen as scheduled. I think it's pretty clear that we're headed towards another day of likely open hearings in which we'll hear from both the accuser, who is accusing Judge Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her more than 3 decades ago, and also hear from Brett Kavanaugh. So we know the person who has accused Judge Kavanaugh. It's Christine Blasey Ford. She made her name public yesterday in the Washington Post. She has accused Kavanaugh back in 1982 of groping her and also trying to take off her clothes at a party when they were teenagers. So this obviously spoils the plan to have Judge Kavanaugh have his nomination, a vote for his nomination, taking place this week in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
I'm trying to think of, besides the Clarence Thomas reference, where we've been here before.
That's it. It goes back decades, but we've been here before with the Clarence Thomas nomination, lifetime appointment on the U.S. Supreme Court. We heard from Anita Hill during an open session, and then we also heard from Judge Clarence Thomas during an open session, and we're likely to see a repeat of that in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I don't know why it took so long for this particular allegation to be made public. I have my thoughts as to why that may be. They're very cynical, but what we do know is that Senator Dianne Feinstein, the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, top Democrat on the committee, received a letter from this individual, Christine Blasey Ford, back in July, and now we're hearing about it in September. I don't know the reason why Senator Feinstein waited so long to make this particular issue public, or why she also failed to notify her Democratic colleagues, at least on the committee, about this allegation about Judge Kavanaugh.
Boy, if there is a hearing and such, would you expect it to happen quickly?
I would expect it to happen relatively quickly, meaning within the next week or so, because Republicans, they want to have Judge Kavanaugh on the bench. They want to have him on the Supreme Court, the 9th seat on the U.S. Supreme Court, relatively soon. They'd like to have him on there before the midterm elections, maybe even before, the idea was before this came forward, having him actually on the bench for the start of the Supreme Court session, which is the first Monday in October, right around the corner. I don't think that's going to happen now because of what we're seeing. I think it's going to be delayed, and we'll see. I think the thing that, if you ask me what are the odds of Judge Kavanaugh ultimately being confirmed, I'd still say they're very good. That I say that, though, without having a lot of information. We don't know the details of this allegation, and there's always the possibility, and keep in mind it is a possibility, we don't know, of another person coming forward with a similar story. If that happens, I think his nomination is sunk, but we haven't seen that, and it's premature to talk about that.
Well, let me go a little deeper with you, John Decker, as a member of the D.C. Bar, an attorney, someone who's known these folks for years. I believe you know Brett Kavanaugh. Your thoughts?
Well, this is the first I've ever heard of anything like this. I think that goes for just about anybody that knows Brett Kavanaugh, and it's unfortunate, but we're at a time period where politics certainly matters, and both Republicans and Democrats are well aware of that, and that's why they can't ignore this allegation, even though there's not much there, just simply based upon the narrative that we've been told. But I think that what the White House counselor Kellyanne Conway said this morning on Fox News is true. We need to hear from this person, and we need to hear from this woman and hear her story under oath before the Senate Judiciary Committee and give Judge Kavanaugh the same opportunity to defend himself before the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Finally, you and I both have some tread on the tire, but recalling what happened 36 years ago would be tough for just about anybody.
Yeah. I certainly recall it. It was shocking in terms of the allegations that were made against Clarence Thomas when he was up for a seat on the U.S. Supreme Court, those allegations made by Anita Hill. And it's pretty remarkable. Here we are sort of repeating that same process so many decades later in terms of having an accuser make an allegation, maybe even hearing from that accuser in an open setting, and then hearing from the nominee to defend himself as it relates to the accuser's accusations.
Yes. A high-tech lynching, I remember Justice Thomas calling it.
That's right. I don't know if those were words that he came up with or his patron, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the senator from Missouri at the time, John Danforth. But ultimately, Republicans stuck by him, and he was confirmed and has a lifetime seat on the U.S. Supreme Court.
John, we always appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye. Our great friend John Decker joining us. Remember, from the White House to your house, only here every morning on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. So, looks like we want to talk about Judge Kavanaugh. We go to Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. I might point out that these tactics, usually when the Democrats perceive that the vote will change in the direction of the court, they will do this. The beginning of these tactics begins with Nixon, when Nixon appointed Haynsworth to replace Fortas on the court, and then they rejected Haynsworth, and then he appointed Carswell, and they both rejected him, and because basically they felt that these two, that they would change the balance of power. That's before Roe versus Wade on forced busing back in the late 60s and 70s, and they'll allow a conservative through if the conservatives are placing another conservative. If it's somebody who is a moderate or something like that, or a liberal that's being replaced, the Democrats will put on a smear campaign. Of course, we talked about Bork, and the only reason why Souter got through the court was because Warren Rudman, who was the New Hampshire, who Souter worked with as an assistant when Rudman was Attorney General of New Hampshire, privately assured Democrats that Souter would not overturn Roe versus Wade. I know the man, and he basically so. And that was again in reaction to when the Republicans buckled that. Collapsed after the rejection of Bork, and they put. But again, Souter was a replacement. Souter only got by with that assurance because he was a replacement for Justice Brennan, a liberal, and he was privately assured by Rudman that Souter would be closer to Brennan than he would be. Of course, Sununu sold him the other way around because Souter worked for Sununu in New Hampshire. Sununu sold him as a neutral. So there was a little bit of fraud in the Souter business, but as far as the court thing, this is to be expected. I mean, the Democrats are going to fight this to tooth and toenail. And the thing is that the vote, Kennedy, reading the fight on Kennedy, is Kennedy was the swing vote on the Roe versus Wade type of decision. So no matter who he appoints, they're going to come up with the last minute smear campaign. That's just been a given, and I mean we've gone through close to 50 years of this now, but the Republicans never seem to learn. And what I'm fearful is that the pressure will cause Murkowski and Collins to buckle, and if the Republicans lose this one, this could affect turnout in the elections. So there's a lot at stake just besides the court. I think it may play in what happens in the Senate balance coming up in this midterm election. So that's my point for the day.
Hank, thank you for making it on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Security Guard Mike, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Hello, sir.
Hey, Kevin Miller. It's great to talk to you this morning. I'm calling in about this Matt Kavanaugh and Ford situation that's going on. First off, I want to say this. If a woman's been raped, she deserves to be heard straight out. And if there is truth to the allegations or truth to whatever she's saying, then the person needs to be punished. So rape is bad, but if a person comes forward with false allegations, that's going to make it harder on their fellow women when they do come forward with rape allegations to make it stick. It's very hard to do because it sets a precedent. Oh, maybe they're all lying. If one person's lying, maybe they're all lying. But so you better be concrete for sure. Plus that Susan Ford, she had a witness, Judge, Mark Judge, he said that never happened because she came forward and he said, I don't remember that ever happening. So now it's Kavanaugh and this judge guy against this lady. And I hate to say this, but she is a professor of psychology and a Democrat from California. That's where she's at now. California's a professor. I mean, we know how that is in the colleges and universities of today. So I know they're out to get this guy in a witch hunt, just like they did, like you always have been saying, Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas and all that. So let's be concrete. If a woman keeps coming forward with these allegations like they did to Judge Roy and all that, and I'm telling you, it's not pretty. They keep dusting off the same playbook. It's getting boring. It's getting boring that they keep doing the same thing. They can't come up with something new to get a guy on. Just keep let's replay the
and
same
remember,
thing
the
over.
Democratic Party, Harvey Weinstein and Les Moonves, they're big donators to the libs. So you talk about hypocrisy. Here you have these jabronis, these punks who have been doing the dastardly deeds to women all the time, supporting Democrats, and Judge Kavanaugh gets the smear job.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Kevin Miller, I tell you what, they got to stop because it's going to hurt other women in the future. It's going to hurt women. You can't just keep running the same playbook because it'll make you have doubts about everybody else who claims to make the same thing, unless you have hard evidence. If there's some hard evidence, the guy needs to be punished. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But you don't just make false allegations and hurt other innocent, decent human beings. That's just the way it is. And I love you, Kevin Miller. You're the best, and you are so good at letting every opinion on your show. You're the best in the whole world. I love you, and thank you very much for your show. Thank you for all you do for Idaho and the Treasure Valley. People of Idaho, I love you too. And let's just keep in mind that we don't want false allegations. We want hard, concrete truth. And thank you very much. I love you, and have a great day.
We love you, Security Guard Mike. Thank you. All right, you too. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Kavanaugh's accuser says she wants to come forward, but really, what evidence does she have except he said she said. And, oh, yes, there were 3 other men in the room, and they've all said it didn't happen.
These hurricanes, after they wreak their initial devastation, then there is the necessity. She should testify under oath. The Senate Judiciary Committee looks like they are headed that way. Judge Kavanaugh, who has categorically denied these allegations, will also have an opportunity to address them under oath.
Wow.
And let that be part of what everybody considers before they cast a vote.
Your thoughts, your reaction next. You're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Tea Party Bob joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you today? Very exciting day, isn't it?
Every day is exciting.
And when are you going to cut that guy Steve off? I can't stand him anymore. I'm going to have to start tuning you out every time he comes on.
That's not very nice.
Well, he's a bozo. You and I have to admit that to each other every once in a while.
I'm more of a big tent kind of guy.
Yes, I noticed. Yeah, I know. Well, you're under the big top all the time. You're the ringmaster. You know, I think Lars hit the nail on the head this morning when he said that if this actually happened, this woman would have told someone about it. You know, I'm not quite sure how you bury something that was supposed to have been so traumatic for 36 years. You would think that as a psychologist, she would have dealt with this problem many years ago with a shrink of her own. The fact that she can't remember the year and how many boys were there in the room has to make you kind of skeptical that this whole story hasn't been made up in her own mind. And who knows, maybe it has. This is just one more sham perpetrated by the Democrats because they're out of options. If Kavanaugh is appointed, they lose their pathway to changing the meaning of the Constitution through the court. And if they allow this woman to testify, she should be on the hot seat, not Kavanaugh. The bigger question is why Feinstein held this information till the last hour when she could have put it out at the public hearing. That would have been the perfect time to do it. And I guess it's because it is such a long time ago, and there is no way to verify what happened. I guess anyone who has a Chinese spy working for them for 20 years on a taxpayer's dime can't be admonished for anything she does. She just gets away with anything she wants to. Another reason to have term limits, my friend, like Feinstein and Leahy, who have planted their headstones in their congressional or Senate seats, we need to change the rules. And if the Republicans allow a delay in Kavanaugh's appointment after hearing this woman, and they are basically unsubstantiated except by her own recollection, then everyone who votes to delay should be fired in the next election. That's all I have to say about this, my friend.
All right, Tea Party Bob, we appreciate you. Take care.
Have a great day.
All right. Before we get to Barb, let's get to traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM.
Jim Duthie.
We go to Barb in Sunny Slope. Barb, good morning.
Hi there. Yeah, I'd like to chime in on something on this Kavanaugh thing. I was looking on the American Psychological Association thing about repressed memories that suddenly come up. And though they acknowledge it is an incredibly rare thing, they say, and I quote, these leaders also agree that it's possible to construct convincing pseudo-memories for events that never occurred. I think the weight is against the woman on this, and I think it should be, and with all the people standing up for Kavanaugh. However, I will have to disagree with Lars and Tea Party Barb, which I never disagree with him, and probably your thoughts on this, in that I know that women sometimes don't say anything to anyone. Now, I don't think that's the case here.
But we really don't know the extent of it. First she said he thought he was drunk, which doesn't excuse anything. And then they both had their clothes on. And, if you can't remember the exact details and everything else, remember, times were different back then.
Yes. Yeah.
Times were different back then. People drank, and you just watch movies and see how men and women interacted. Not saying it was right, and we condone that behavior, but it was a very different world.
It was a different world, and no matter who he was then, he is not that now.
Right. I can recall in middle school and high school, it was very prominent where you would have the boys grabbing the girls' posterior, and then the girls would slap them or whatever. obviously people would go to jail for that today, but that is a very different world that we live in, and that's how I see it.
I do agree with you, but speaking in a sense towards April that called in earlier, I will have to agree that there are women, and I being one of them, who had a horrendous thing happen and would not tell a soul. I did not tell a soul for years.
Thank you, Barb.